With the conclusion of March Madness and Michigan bringing home the championship, we now have the last data point for the majority of this class until things ramp up again next month for the Combine. So there's no better time than now for us here at LeagueBound to run a mock draft simulator on Tankathon and get 30 first-round picks. These picks are just what we would do in these situations, and as always, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. So with the first pick, I have the Dallas Mavericks, and in this scenario, they jumped up 7 spots in the odds, and they have another number 1 pick that they can pair with a potential franchise star in Cooper Flagg. And normally I think I would go AJ DeBonsa number 1, but in this situation I think that I'm actually going to go Darren Peterson. For one, I know he's a player who, he had a good year. It was an odd year, but there were still some things I know people wanted to see a lot more of, particularly with the passing and some of the downhill attacking. But I'm a person who believes that he has those skill sets still in his game, and he can add those as things go along. But with a situation like Dallas, where he's playing alongside another star guard and Kyrie, assuming the Mavericks do bring him back, and another number 1 pick in Cooper Flagg, I think that takes some of the pressure off of Peterson to be this star player immediately and can let him develop into something naturally. And even if he is somebody who's just kind of a high volume movement shooter, I still think that could be really valuable for what the Mavericks are trying to build. But I'm inclined to believe he has a bit more juice than that.
With the second pick, I will be picking for the Washington Wizards. For them, I will be taking AJ DeBonsa with the second pick. Probably run to the podium here. Feel like he fits what they have. I think it's a perfect situation for him to develop. He has good defensive bigs behind him in Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr. He has a point guard to give him the ball. He has a bunch of other wings that teams just can't focus on him. And it's just kind of like a really good place for him. So I'm going to go with AJ DeBonsa for them. I think if he lands at a place like this, he has a legit chance to being a superstar in this league.
All right. With the third pick, we have the Utah Jazz. I think the Jazz just take best player available, and for me, that is Cameron Boozer. I know there's a lot of conversation. Could this be Caleb Wilson? I really like him as well, and I think for the Jazz, they could find success with either player, but with the history of the Boozer name in Utah and with the season that we just saw Cameron Boozer have, going deep into March Madness once again for the Duke Blue Devils and basically running away with National Player of the Year, I think he has so many tools on the offensive end that Will Hardy, if he is going to get to stay as head coach for the Utah Jazz, is going to unlock. And I'd be excited to see what him alongside Ace Bailey can do as a young duo.
So next up, I have the 4th pick with the Atlanta Hawks. And in this scenario, they get the Pelicans pick at number 4. And I think here I'm going to go Caleb Wilson. I think in general for this draft, I would be looking more for the guard spot. But with them having the 4th pick here, I think you just got to go Caleb Wilson. This is a team who really is trying to compete right now, it seems, even after they moved off of Trae Young. And this team, I think, really, though they have some nice pieces in their front court, I think Caleb Wilson would be an insane addition, especially we talked about before how he's kind of in that top tier of guy. And I think adding him with a team that's trying to contend, you have a freak of nature who I think has real potential on both sides of the ball. Some people wanted more from him on the defensive side as well. But I think with Caleb Wilson, you have somebody who has a real chance of being a star, and you pair that with a situation where there's a real chance to go out and compete right away.
And with the next pick, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. This is a weird spot because I don't think I'm going to take my next best available player, which would be Darius Acuff. I don't know how he would pair with what they have currently, especially since they traded for Garland. What the Clippers would do most likely, and I think what I would do here would be take Keaton Wagler from Illinois. He just kind of fits what they like to do. They like tall, long, athletic guys. I think he could play alongside Garland and possibly replace him down the road if you want to get rid of him. I think it's your best bet for still being good now, which they are incentivized to do because they don't own their picks going forward, and like a good future piece. Kind of gives them not that he plays like this, but it reminds me of when they took Shea, they like this type of archetype of player. So I think Keaton Wagler for the Clippers here.
Up next, we have the Brooklyn Nets, just straight up getting their pick here in the first round. And this is kind of a weird spot for them because I'm actually going to go, even though their guard room is very kind of bloated right now with young talent, I still feel like the best player available is either Kingston Flemings or Darius Acuff. You kind of just pick which one you like. And for me right now, I think Darius Acuff is here at 5, a very low pick. And he could be, I mean, there's people talking about he could be as high as 4, even 3 with what he was able to do at the end of the SEC season. So Darius Acuff going to Brooklyn, that's a team that they just need to find someone who's going to lift that franchise out of the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And maybe Darius Acuff can do it.
At 7 for the Kings, I think Sacramento would ideally like to be a little higher in this scenario, but there's still obviously some good players that they can go out and get. But I think I'm going to go Kingston Flemings. I know some people still believe in the star power of a Mikael Brown, but I think Flemings, he's a guy who, at the very least, I think will be a solid guard who plays a lot of years in the NBA, even if he doesn't necessarily hit on his star outcome. But at the same time, I think you just look at a lot of playoff teams, right? I think having a guard who can get to the paint, there's some talk about like being a player who kind of settles for a lot of midi pull-ups, but I think you can kind of work that to his advantage. And also he's a guy who has the ability to get downhill at will. So I think that there's a lot to his game that is still pretty valuable. Also, you add the stuff that he can do defensively as well. I think Flemings could be a nice pickup for the Kings to go alongside some of their other young pieces that they have right now.
Next up, I have the Grizzlies. We all kind of know the situation there with Ja Morant. I think with the depth of this guard class, they kind of have to take a guard here. And with that, I think I'm going to take Mikael Brown Jr. I don't know between him and Phylon, who I think is like the better player. Like this is something I'll probably be looking into going forward. However, I think if you take them two on the board, I think Brown probably has the slightly higher upside. Like there's more things he can do. So for me, I think the Grizzlies, they're getting ready to go into a rebuild. They can afford to develop a guy and take the higher upside swing. So for me, I think Mikael Brown is a perfect fit here.
All right, so here at number 9, we have the Chicago Bulls. Alongside Matas Buzelis right here, I would go with Nate Ament, a guy that can certainly score the basketball. We saw, especially down the stretch this season, he had some better performances than he did early in the year, where I think he was still adjusting to the SEC and adjusting to adding some strength and some weight to his frame. Once we got to the end of the season, we saw Tennessee go on a decent little run in March Madness, and Nate Ament certainly has the upside of being a big-time addition for the Chicago Bulls, especially picking at 9 at this point, adding a player that can potentially be, skill set-wise, a top 5 player out of this class. I think that's a victory, and playing him alongside Matas Buzelis, who I see more as a guy that is at his best getting downhill and going to the rim. I think Nate Ament can provide an interesting lineup dynamic where he can be out on the perimeter as well as getting to the basket.
All right, I think with the 10th pick here, I'm actually going to go with Branden Burries. I know he's somebody who has a wide variety of skill sets. He's kind of a two-way big guard, can score in a variety of different ways. The Bucks, whatever side you're on with the Giannis situation, I think that he can be beneficial for both ways that goes. You have another young player who could develop into a real piece and come in and contribute right away for the Bucks. But I think he's also a guy who, he shared the court a lot with Jaden Bradley this year, and I think he's somebody who can really shoulder more of an offensive load. And so for Branden Burries, I really like him for the Bucks just because he's a guy who I think has a high floor and you can maybe toy around with some of that upside while they enter this long rebuild.
I'm going to reach here for the Warriors. I don't necessarily have him on my board here. I just think he's kind of the perfect fit for what the Warriors like to do. So I'm going to take Braylon Mullins from UConn. I think he gives them a second shooter that I think that offense desperately needs to kind of thrive. I think Curry's shooting gravity is already a lot, but I think when this team is at their best, they have a second guy who the defense really has to divert attention to. I think he's probably one of the best movement shooters in the draft. He didn't shoot it all that well this year out of college, to be quite honest, but he has like a long history of shooting the ball at a very high level, whether that be AAU, high school. Like, he can definitely shoot the ball. I'm not really worried about that. He's also like really athletic. Like, a lot of times you want to say like sneaky athletic. No offense, because he's white. A lot of people will be like, he's sneaky athletic. I think this guy's like actually athletic. Like, there's plays he makes on the floor that like he jumps out the gym, he soars for blocks, he can dunk on you if you're not really paying attention. Like, he's a real athlete. He has good size. He's a little skinny, and like, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how much he would necessarily play right away. However, I just don't think, like, if I'm the Warriors, I think he's like the best upside swing, and he right away from day one will probably be able to shoot the ball. So I just think he fits their scheme the best. And the other guy I was debating with is like Yaxel, who I really like, but I think we've seen that like wings who can't shoot can struggle within this like Warriors offense, even though I think he has a feel to make it work. I just think Braylon is kind of tailor-made for them here, so I'll take him.
So I'm also going to try to do a slight reach here. I know he may not be seen as like a guaranteed lottery guy at this point, but I'm looking a little bit further down in the first round, and I'm looking at Cameron Carr from the Baylor Bears moving up here to the Portland Trail Blazers at pick number 12. I think his shooting ability is one of the best in the entire class. He's got great length. He can shoot over the defenders. And I just really like the idea, even if he isn't a starter right away, but being on the floor alongside Denny Avdia when he gets downhill or when he's working out of the post with his back to the basket, he's just a great option as a catch-and-shoot player out there on the three-point line that is going to make it so much harder to guard the floor whenever both him and Avdia are out there for the Trailblazers.
So with the 13th pick for the Miami Heat, I think I'm going to go LeBaron Philon. He just seems like a guy who kind of has that Miami Heat mindset. I know they drafted Kasparis last year, but I still think that he's a guy who, even when he is playing alongside other guards, I think that is kind of beneficial for his game. He's a guy who I think can react off of some of the other creators on the floor, and I think he also can be the lead guard on the floor, which we saw this year at Alabama. A big step he took from his freshman season when he was playing alongside Mark Sears. And overall, I feel like we've talked times before about some of the defensive capabilities that he has as well to be effective on that end. I know that's kind of gone down, but overall, I'm a guy who's pretty big on Philon, and I like the idea of him being a potential future guard for the Miami Heat.
Okay, I'm up next with the Grizzlies here, and the Grizzlies took Michael Brown Jr. with the earlier pick they had. And I think what they would do here, you have your guard going forward, you have your front court kind of locked up with Edey. I think you try to build that wing room out. You have Coward, you have Wells. I think you had another athletic defensive wing here. I think they go with Yaxel Lindenborg, get some experience. Maybe a little old for the timeline, but he's kind of just old in general. But I think you get a really good player that just is going to probably accelerate. Like, he'll make them better. So I'll take him here.
We have the Oklahoma City Thunder at 15 here, pick via the Clippers. And they have just pretty much any option they want. They're just looking at who can we fill out on the bench. So if you're looking at a guy that has really stepped up his game, especially in March Madness, I hate to say it, but I think Adai Mara would be a really annoying pick for the rest of the NBA. To have Chet Holmgren in as a starter and bring Adai Mara either off the bench or in some other type of role alongside Chet Holmgren, maybe if Isaiah Hartenstein ends up moving on in the future. Adai Mara showcased so much ability, especially deeper in that March Madness and eventual national championship run for the Michigan Wolverines. He's dominant on the glass. He's just so difficult to defend because of his height and his, strength inside. I know the NBA is a different game, but at a certain point, 7'5" is 7'5", and Adai Mara could be dangerous with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Hornets, this might be a little bit of a controversial one. I know Jaden Quaintance has had a very odd year just because of the injuries, only playing 4 games and like the knee issues from the ACL. I think with the Hornets, they're a team who they're a little bit better than their record shows. I don't think they're a play-in team. I think that what they are right now, they are a bona fide playoff team. And I would hope that would continue into next year. But one of the things that I feel like they're missing, or rather, some area that they could use a little bit more depth in, is in their front court right now. And I think Jaden Quaintance, if he is able to be healthy, he gives the Hornets some things that they don't really have right now. Particularly, he's a big guy who can switch out onto the perimeter, and also he's a guy who can also guard inside. He's just an insane athlete if things are working together, and he doesn't really have a whole lot to his game offensively, but I think defensively he's everything that the Hornets kind of need. I'm willing to take the gamble here and just pair him with the Hornets and hope that things do work out.
Next up, I have the Raptors. I'm going to go with Christian Anderson. He came out today and said that he was entering his name in the draft. He didn't mention returning, which is a little shocking, given the bag Texas Tech is surely throwing at him. But I think if he's in this class, he's one of the best three-point shooters off the pick and roll. He can pass the ball really well. He averaged like 7.4 assists this season. He can fill it up as a scorer. He is a little slighter frame, but I just think he's so talented and he can really score the basketball. I think that's kind of what the Raptors need. So I think he fits what they want to do here, and I just think he's just a really good guy, a really good guy for themselves.
I'm back up again with the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they just picked Adai Mara on their previous one a couple of picks ago, and again, just adding on players that could fill out the bench, add a specific role, or be a player that maybe they kind of develop behind the scenes until he's ready to go. And I believe Kareem Lopez could be that guy. He's seen by some people a little bit higher up, maybe earlier in the lottery. But if he's slipped this far, I could see the Thunder as a team that already has the pieces to win an NBA title. Picking up a guy like Kareem Lopez for a down-the-line type of back pocket option, maybe he develops into, a solid piece that can continue this dynasty that it looks like OKC is putting together. But Kareem Lopez, his slide will fall here and conclude at pick 18.
19 here, I think I'm going to go Koa Pete for the Hornets. Now, I know he's a guy who might come back next year, but he's a guy who I think still has some promise that could be used for the Hornets system. For one, I think he's a guy who, though he doesn't really have a perimeter shot, I think he's a guy who can kind of be a nice little connective passer. And I think that's something that doesn't really get talked about a lot with Koa. You also mix in some of the athleticism and the above the rim stuff that he can do. I feel like Charles Lee could find a way to make use of him, especially with a lot of the other highly talented offensive players, specifically Con Knippel, LaMelo Ball. The idea of him paired with LaMelo Ball, I think, is something that really intrigues me. And if he were to go in the first round, this is a spot that I like for him.
Next up, I have the San Antonio Spurs. It's tough because I have two guys that are pretty high on my board that are falling, kind of free falling at the moment. I think I'm going to stop Morez's fall, though. I think they don't really need anybody else to handle the ball. They have enough people who do that. Probably one of the best backcourt combinations in the league. I do think they can stand to get a little more physical on the front line, a little bigger in their front court besides Wemby. I think putting this type of defensive monster with Wemby could really cause problems for teams. And he's really athletic. He can catch lobs. He can do a lot of things that you want out of a four-man. I think he can play with Wemby. He can maybe even play some small ball five when Wemby's out. And he can switch on the guards. I just think he does a lot that I really like here. To me, he does a lot of similar things to a prospect that we took earlier, Jaden Quaintance. I think he does a lot of similar things to him, but he's a lot healthier so far in his career. So he is a little bit older, but I think this is probably a fair trade-off. So I don't have that much distance for them, so I think this is still for the Spurs.
All right, so after the Spurs, we have the Detroit Pistons via the Timberwolves in this mock draft scenario. Picking at 21, and this Pistons team are kind of in a win-now mode. So I think at this point, you could take a player like Hans Steinbeck, a physical guy. He's not necessarily going to light the world on fire from three-point range. I know maybe there's some Pistons fans that are looking for shooting. But I like the idea of just adding another physical force that, encapsulates this Detroit Pistons identity of physical basketball. Him alongside Jalen Duren. I mean, that is one of the best rebounding front courts you'll see in the Eastern Conference. So we'll see if he works out. And he also was a double-double machine at Washington. So maybe the offense is a little bit underrated from my end. So Hannes Steinbeck moving to Detroit.
So part of the reason I didn't go with a guard earlier for the Hawks is that I knew they would have another pick later in this draft, and I would have a chance to get another first-round caliber player. So I think here's where I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger and take Bennett Sturtz, 22nd for the Hawks. Now, this is a guy who I think he has some issues creating separation and kind of being a creator, if you will, in a way. But I think he's also a guy who can shoot, play off the ball a little bit. And like, you also have Jalen Johnson, who is kind of their star player right now, and I think he can play off of him. And also I think that there's a lot of defenders around him to kind of insulate him and not make him as big of a liability as maybe a guy like Trae Young was. Ultimately, I think Sturtz is a guy who can provide some offensive value right now, and whether they are willing to keep CJ McCollum, I think he can provide some of the stuff that he does as well.
Okay, with the next pick, I am picking for Brandon 76ers here. I think I'm going to go with Dalen Swain. I think he is a really good wing. He has some flaws, but he can like really pass the ball. He has good feel for the game. He can kind of just do a little bit of everything to me. And I think he kind of fits some of what like Philly can use, like especially with his playmaking ability. Like Maxey at times can kind of seem like the only guy out there who's a playmaker, and he really wants to score the ball too. You have Embiid, who's a scorer, Paul George, who's a scorer. I think he's like somebody who can come in, kind of help run your offense a little bit off the bench and like play alongside and play off the ball as well. I think he's just a good utility piece here for the Sixers, who have a lot of talent and just could use more guys like this. So
next pick, we have the LA Lakers at 24 here. And to me, I know I'm not the Lakers fan of this podcast, but to me at this point, I think Chris Sinak Jr. from Houston is sticking out for a Lakers team that has been waiting for somebody to fill that big man role ever since Anthony Davis has been, gone to the Dallas Mavericks for about a year now, and then moving on to the Washington Wizards. It just hasn't really worked out as much as they were hoping for with the guy like DeAndre Ayton. So Chris Sinak, maybe he can come in, maybe JJ Redick and the rest of that staff can kind of continue to unlock his offensive potential that we started to see at the end of the year under head coach Kelvin Sampson at Houston. So I'd be interested to see also what the pick and roll dynamic looks like with Chris Sinak and a guy like Luka Doncic whenever he can finally get healthy. So yeah, I'd be excited about that if I was the Lakers.
For 25 here, I think I'm going to go Amari Allen. He's a guy who was kind of slowly gaining traction more and more as the year went on, but I think now he's probably going to go in the draft this year. And he's a guy who I think just screams NBA wing, can shoot the ball, can defend. And I think the Nuggets are a team that kind of need some more consistent defense at times. So I think Allen can kind of contribute to that. And I think the Nuggets have also shown that they can come in and take players off of rookie contracts and develop them. Peyton Watson and Christian Brown are both examples of that. And Allen is a guy who I think who you could argue has some more skills than those two guys did coming in. So I think here I feel pretty confident about going Allen.
okay, next up, I'm picking for the New York Knickerbockers here. I'm going to go with Malik Thomas. I think he gives them another guard that can shoot the ball at a high level. Isn't great on defense, but like legit gives effort. Like I'm pretty sure like at all times he's at least trying from what it looks like on tape. Like he doesn't look like it looks like it's more of like a skill issue on defense than an effort issue. And I think you can teach the things that he doesn't have on that end. He has long arms. He's 6'5". He really started to come on at like the end of the year. He had a really good tournament. He was kind of consistent all year though. Like he was able to score the ball at a pretty high level. The passing, it can be hit or miss. Sometimes he's playing with blinders on, and then sometimes he's like finding bigs for like lobs and stuff. So I think it's a guy that goes into a situation where you don't have to play him right away with the Knicks. Like there's no need to necessarily rush him out there when he's not ready. However, if like a guy like Josh Hart isn't making shots, there's like they kind of have a hole at that 2 guard spot when he's not making shots, and like it gives you another wrinkle, especially when you get to the playoffs. Like it gives you somebody that people have to close out to.
My second to last pick in this mock draft at 27, we have the Boston Celtics. And I'm looking big man here. I think there's a couple options, but with this 5-out system, I think that Henry Vassar is a guy that could play some sort of role with this Boston Celtics rotation. They like to shoot the 3. We know they love to do it. And among the big guys left in this class, I would personally think that Mo Krivas from Arizona might be a better player right now. But specifically for the Celtics, I think Henry Vassar might be a decent option as a guy that can pick and pop, hit some top-of-the-arc threes, and just be kind of another one of these annoying role players when you're playing against the Boston Celtics that you look up at the end of the night at the box score and you're like, man, Vassar had 12 points, 8 rebounds off the bench on 4 made threes. It's like, how did we let that happen? And it's because he's a pretty good player.
I think for the Wolves here, I'm going to go Patrick Gangba. He's a guy who kind of thrives in half-court settings, and he's also got a big presence inside. And though he might not be the best defender in space, I think he's also a good player who can just kind of hold his position and kind of deter defenses. Might be a little bit of a weird fit, but I think adding another big who can kind of come in and provide some additional offensive value right away is not a bad thing at the end of the day. And I would go maybe another guard here, but I think they've also gotten some questions answered with the addition of Ayo Dosunmu. So I'm just going to go the best player available here and get Patrick Gangba.
Okay, I'm next up with the Cavs here. I'm going to take Mo Krivas from Arizona. Gives them another big guy, gives you some flexibility on whether or not you want to move off Allen in the future. Gives you another really big body who can play defense, a physical presence down low. So give me Mo Krivas to pair with the already defensively stout front court of the Cavaliers.
Right here at 30, the Dallas Mavericks pairing up Isaiah Evans with his former teammate in Cooper Flagg, adding another perimeter shooter, another scorer from outside that has a legitimate NBA range. Could be an interesting fit at the end of the first round here. Maybe that chemistry develops and he becomes a really valuable piece for this Dallas Mavericks team that has had a rough back portion of the year.